right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Blossoming Together podcast. Today we have a guest speaker on with us. Her name is Lauren James, and I'll let her tell us her credentials, her background.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren James. I am a BCBA, LABA, I guess, Master of Science, MS, BCBA, LBA, the letters.
You have all the letters behind your name.
I've got the letters behind my name to back it up. Today's actually my 6-year BCBA anniversary.
Oh,
and thank you. I count the day I took the test, not the day I got my results, simply because that's what everyone else gets to do now.
Yeah.
Oh, fair.
You know?
Yeah.
But I'm a women's behavior coach. I am from New Hampshire, and I work with women one-on-one to, work on their goals using acceptance and commitment training. Just the basics of ABA behavior, using those committed actions based on your values and keeping it moving forward and making sure that you're living, I don't like to say in your truth, but living your favorite life, living the life that makes you feel good, feel happy, and it's not always rainbows.
Right.
Exactly. Like feeling like even on those bad days, accepting it for what it is, learning from it, just like we do in ABA all the time, learning from the consequences and then keeping it moving. And when you can't keep it moving, giving yourself the grace. That's the important part for me. But I've been, like I said, a BCBA for 6 years, and I'm very bad at intros. I think
no, that's perfect. That was a great intro.
I do have to say that I like to say that it'll be in the title of this, I'm sure, is that I am an autistic BCBA.
Yeah.
I recently, as of December, so it's still recent.
Right. Very recent. So it hasn't been a year yet.
It hasn't even been a year yet. I've been diagnosed with autism, and I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 17. So it wasn't such a
surprise,
big shocker. Yeah. But being in this field for so long, and I've been a BCBA for 6 years, but I've been in the field for 10 years,
Yeah.
As RBT and all that. Well, I never got the RBT. I just was a BT.
But you were tech. You were changing lives for a long time.
I've been doing it, and I always, when you look back, you knew. But isn't
it weird? Like, as I feel like even me and Kirsten talk about it a lot. We're always on the lookout, especially not with ourselves per se, but with our daughters. We're always like looking for signs, or we're like comparing them to like everyone else, checking like their milestones. So I wonder if like you felt that way, like you were comparing other people maybe, but not so much yourself.
That's really what it is, and it would be funny because I'd be doing like a Vineland or something with a parent, and we'd be getting to certain things, and I'd be like, oh, well, don't worry, I don't even do that.
Yeah.
And it's like typical things that like you look back and like, oh.
You're like, wait, I was supposed to be doing that?
Maybe I should be doing that? Like, I just thought everyone,
or you think these tools are outdated, or you think the tools are outdated, maybe even like, because we're learning to also adapt as a field again, right? Like things are changing, so maybe this just isn't like legit. Like it's like the old ABA.
Exactly. So it never really occurred to me until this past December, and it was like, oh.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. How old were you again when you got?
I was 31.
Okay. Wow.
And I was, not old.
No.
31 years young. But that's 31 years of experience on this planet and thinking one way.
Yeah.
Right.
And always feeling very much out of sorts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a black sheep or anything, but
not like everyone else.
Yeah, like a gray sheep. Like I definitely learned to mask so well. And
you didn't even know you were masking, right? Because it didn't occur to you until probably your diagnosis.
I think a few years ago, I started learning a little bit more terminology that wasn't so ABA related. And I think that's very important. It wasn't just I was listening to the behavior analysis field about autism because autism is not just the behavior analysis field. So I was hearing more and more and just learning more vocabulary, I guess. And that masking and camouflaging were never words that...
I never heard about them until the last 5 years or 4 years.
Right?
Until social media. No one taught me in my schoolwork programs. It wasn't really in practicum even.
Right.
You learned about it when I was on Instagram and on TikTok.
Exactly. And that's what it was. And I started connecting more. I had made my own ABA Instagram. So I started connecting more to the ABA field. But what I was trying to do and still try to do is I tried to follow, more autistic accounts. That's what the most, those are the people I was serving, am serving. Yeah. I need to hear their voices. So when I was listening and trying to understand them more, I was seeing myself and my behavior and my responses and understanding myself a bit more. And, as the years had gone on, I become pregnant. And after I had my son, when the overstimulation just got to a point where, I know every mom goes through it.
You're touched out. You're I need a break. Bluey talks about it.
Right. You guys talked about it, but it's it got to a point where there wasn't a moment in between, I need a break and broke. You know what I mean? It got to the point where I couldn't just put a mask on. I couldn't just be okay, I can do this for the person in front of me so they're not uncomfortable, because that's what I grew up always doing, is to try and not make people uncomfortable. And then when I did take off my mask, as it fell, that's when people punished my behavior by being she's so annoying, all this and that. And that's who I was. So I put the mask back on. But when I had my son, I could not.
You didn't have enough to give.
I had nothing. Yeah. And my son was very colicky. He is a belly sleeper.
Aww.
And so he can't sleep on his belly. You can't put him on his belly. He probably would have been fine, but he had to sleep on me or my husband.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's
so you weren't sleeping.
Right. And, when you have all these environmental factors and all the physical, it just got to a point where I knew something was wrong. And, I should say trigger warning, because this is my reality. The worst part, and how I knew something was very different, and I'm not just taking postpartum depression this way, is when I had punched myself in the face. And when I engaged in behaviors that I had never engaged in before. I worked with many a client with SIB before. I have been a part of so many intervention teams, and never once in my life did I ever think that it would get to that point. I was okay.
Even after it happened, what did that feel like? What was the reaction?
It was bad. This was a time when my family and I, my husband, my son and I, we lived in Colorado with no one around. So we moved back east. Yeah. And it was, 6 months in, and the feeling afterwards, it wasn't so, it was more so in the moment. If you ever saw the movie Get Out, and if people that have seen the movie Get Out, they might understand what I'm saying, that I'm not going to give spoilers, but also, sorry, don't listen if you don't want to. But one of the main things of the movie is that the character is hypnotized, and they can see their body and their life and all these things happening, but they can't control it. That's how it feels in the moment. Yeah. It feels like that person is taking kind of control, but it's not not like Fight Club. I don't remember what that's called, but it's I'm still there, but it feels different.
Out of body, maybe a little, because that's
out of body, but I'm there. It's I know I'm there.
Know you're there.
I'm telling myself, girly, what are you doing? You can, what's going on? And so a few months had gone by. That was April 2023. A few months had gone by. We moved back. We moved back. It's a lot. Things are happening. It's, nothing bad, quote unquote, nothing out of the ordinary again has happened since until December I said I was diagnosed in December. Yeah. There was a day I don't even remember exactly what happened. Doesn't really matter, but I had eloped. And that was the moment I realized I eloped more than I've ever really thought. Yeah. My husband and I were about 20 feet from my house in the car. And I just said, I need to walk because I was upset. I was escalated to a point where I'm just like, I need to walk. I just want to walk home. Yeah. So 20 feet, I want to walk. And then I just turn around and I'm walking the opposite direction and I don't have my phone. I don't have anything. And my husband is
freaking out.
He's freaking out. He ran after me, apparently, I'm just walking around and it's December. It's like a misty, rainy day. I had just gotten new shoes, so I luckily got to break them in, silver linings. Yeah. But after a couple of hours, I was found by an officer because my husband had to. And it was really in that moment I was like, okay, he had to involve, and law enforcement and just to find me, it wasn't like a scary situation or anything, but it was just like okay. And it was like
a reality check kind of.
Yeah. And during that walk, I was all by myself. I had no headphones. I was really just going on a walk.
Do you remember what you were thinking? Or was it one of those?
I was thinking about first, is he going to find me? Is he looking? I knew he was looking, but is he going to find me? And then it was, how many times have I done this? How many times have I literally just left the house, left the apartment, got in my car, sat in the car, drove away? How many times have I engaged in elopement, bolting behavior? And the number that I could think of for the last few months was too high for me to be like, okay.
Let it go.
Yeah,
it was like I was clear-headed because I needed to go on that walk. I needed to have that time, but it was also So I had already had to seek out a new doctor because the doctor that I had seen, my psychiatrist that had diagnosed me with ADHD, that has known me for 16 years almost, I got an email that she lost her license and no other communication about why or anything after that. So that was on Halloween. I thought it was a joke. But that was rough. So the month of November.
You trusted her too already.
Trusted her.
You had built this rapport, like she knew you. She knew your history.
Exactly. And she was very much like a high up and like very well known in, the Massachusetts community and like the psychiatric community for her work in ADHD. So I had only ever thought that was the issue for a very long time until, again, I started hearing more and more things that didn't sound like I was understanding, like the parts of ADHD that like, yeah, I can relate to that. But there are parts that I was like, no, that's not quite it. That felt more like the autistic symptoms. I don't really like to say symptoms, but the autistic characteristics and traits.
Like traits,
yeah. So when I had to find a new doctor, I just basically let it all out. I had to.
Yeah.
They needed to get to know me from the start. They caught me 2 days after I had just run away because that's when it was scheduled for. And at the end of it, I basically just said, and I think I'm autistic.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, then let's go back off of that. And I think for me, it was very a quick thing, It was.
Well, December, right?
December. It was diagnosed in December.
Yeah. And then you're telling us in Halloween as you got the email and then.
November was a rough month because it was the beginning of December. It was, I believe it was December 4th that I started talking to my doctor about it.
Okay.
And then the month of December progresses.
Okay.
More doctor talks, interviews, and the assessment that they do for adults. I don't remember the letters for it. I think it's ADOS.
Oh, ADOS.
Yes. So it's like, doing all these interview questions, asking me, to describe the pictures and the books and like all these things. And I was doing the right things.
Yeah.
Except for the things that like, because I, as an analyst, had to go and look at the assessment after it was done to see how I think I did. Yeah. There are things that like I have a lot of stems. I do not sit still. I move my hands, I twirl, I chew my tongue. I have to like, if I sit in a certain way, like it's self-stimulating, like it's all these things. And those were the things that I knew that she had to have been picking up on because those are the things that I didn't really know that I was doing.
Yeah. And you just thought maybe they were your ADHD traits or
exactly.
Like, I'm always moving. I can't focus. So this is how I'm helping myself.
Exactly. And, the one about eye contact, I always get a little weirded out because I never target eye contact. I think,
me either.
And maybe it's just because I never did before because I thought it was uncomfortable. Hindsight's 2020. That could be why, but it's like right now we're in a Zoom call or not a Zoom call, but we're on this together. I have to.
Yeah.
Contact looking at us face like gives me a lot of anxiety that I didn't understand why, because it was so uncomfortable. And, talking about my history and stuff with her, I guess, is what really brought it up is like I said, was always a runner. And I didn't know how to communicate feelings very effectively until a few years ago when I met my husband. Like I literally was teaching my clients how to communicate effectively. So I was like, let me teach myself because I think a lot of women that I have talked to that are diagnosed with autism, when we get to a certain point where we just can't communicate our feelings much because we don't actually know because we're told that they're wrong.
Right.
So, validation.
Exactly. So it would be, you get the gaslighting and all that stuff just being a woman in general.
Or you're told you're just not good at it or this is something you suck at. Like not that maybe you should.
Right. And it's, when I was little, I was one to always bop around from like different activities because I wasn't that great. No one gave me the confidence to just continue to do it. Like that's just girlhood in general. But then it was the extreme. And I talked to my husband about this the other day. It was the extreme embarrassment about being around other people and other people. And it wasn't just like a normal amount of being scared of people. Like there would be days where I just refused to go to school and I wouldn't tell my mom, oh, I'm not going to school. I would play sick. I would, put the penny under my tongue. I would, put the thermometer on the light lamp and then say it because I just needed to get out of like.
And that was your kind of like maybe masking camouflage. Like you knew how to get out of the situation or what needs to be done to get out of the situation, No one's catching on. Like I'm avoiding people or I'm avoiding these like interactions.
Exactly. And looking back, my family is always like, oh, well, you were always in the hospital. Like you're always sick. You're always sick. And a few weeks ago, I had to tell them like, you got to stop bringing that up because I did this because of this.
Yeah.
It's what it is. It's because I look back and they didn't know.
How do they feel now knowing that you have like, I feel like we're even like, now that you have a late diagnosis, do they get it or is it something?
It definitely took them a bit. When I first had explained to my parents, I wasn't really clear what was happening. It because I couldn't really grasp what was happening. Because
You're
on top of
it yourself.
Exactly. And on top of the autism diagnosis in December, I also had a LEAP procedure 2 days before Christmas. And I was waiting for those results to hear if I had cervical cancer or not.
No.
And it was all these things, like trying to talk to my parents. I was, I had taken myself out of the ABA field for a little bit from August to about December, just because you have to.
Yeah.
And when I was getting myself like back into it, finding a place of work was extremely difficult because I did have this knowledge of, oh, well, now I'm supposed to be bringing in insurance money as a BCBA for this population. And before it was already really hard. That's why I left. And now it's going to be even harder because I have to find a company that's going to
the values need to align with me. Same with, and now, now you feel them personally.
Exactly.
It's not just like a population you're serving the population that you like relate to.
Exactly.
Or you're a part of.
It's my population. And I didn't know it before, but I know it now.
Yeah.
So when I basically had to talk to my parents about, I'm very grateful that my parents are able to help me during this time, but I had to talk to them about like, this is what I need help with. And by the way, here's why. Yeah. And I'm an emotional gal.
Yeah.
I am so surprised that I've kept it together this long. Pat on the back for me, acceptance. But it's always been like a theme in my house that like, you can't talk to me if I'm escalated. And I never asked for help because anytime I did, it was either not helping, making it worse, or I was told no. But finally before we talked to my parents, I was able to get into my husband's head, like, I need some kind of help. So that's when my husband and I, we've been together for almost 10 years. He listens to everything I say. He does every single thing that I ask him to do when I say I need help with something. Yeah. But if I say I don't know what I need, I can't expect him to just figure it out. But now that I can say, I know what I need.
Yeah.
I need some support that I didn't really realize that I needed. So we were able to kind of talk to them about it, but they still didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so it was here and there, never really talked about, I would say it, but it didn't really click until I think a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago. My husband and I just was having a moment. I was having a meltdown, really. It was, I was overstimulated. I couldn't figure out anything. I had no supports. I was trying, and we needed to go up to my parents' house for some reason, but I was just like, I'm not going inside. Yeah. I'm not dealing with them. I can't right this moment. And my husband had gone in and they talked about me for a few minutes, and my husband basically had to explain to them, no, she's autistic. Guys, no.
Get it.
And they finally.
And she's not doing it on purpose, kind of like that. She's doesn't want to avoid you. She just literally can't, it'll add to her.
Right. And I think I don't think they realized, my husband said this, that they didn't realize that it came from a doctor.
Yeah.
That they weren't really accepting of, they thought it came from me.
Yeah.
But because how I conveyed it to them and how I conveyed it in general, because I did not.
You're already going through it yourself. You're coming to terms with the diagnosis. I didn't even ask you how you felt after.
Yeah. I mean, after it was how I feel now. I feel very similar still. It's a relief one day, and it's the worst thing in the world the next day. And neither of those two things are the relief part isn't even true either, because it's not so much of a relief, because there still comes life. It's a reality, there still comes consequences to this. And some of that is, relationships change, how people view and treat me, not the people that I care about so much. So, not so much. Like there are some people that like, were one of my best friends, and I can't correlate the two, but
yeah,
they're
not your best friends anymore.
If I change line in, you'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But some days it's like, okay, like I get it. But in that same token, I'll be like, I didn't get it for 31 years though. And you kind of mourn what could have been.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do that, how I might not even know. Right.
Yeah.
So
it's always these what ifs, right? Like if I found out when I was 7, okay, what if I found out when I got my ADHD day? There's probably, you look back at like the milestones or big things that happened.
Exactly. And I do think back, and if, piggybacking what you just said, if I found out when I found out about my ADHD, I don't think I would have accepted it. I think
at 17.
At 17, like ADHD is one thing. And especially like being 17 in 2009, I'm not like toting Adderall culture, but that's what it was. People knew about that name, and you were kind of cool in a sense if you had Adderall. And I'm like, well, all I want to be is cool. So now okay, I'll have ADHD.
Got my N.
Like, cool. But if you said autism, it would be, it's still looked at as such a negative thing when it's not.
Yeah.
I
had a question about that. Like, I see there are a lot of people on social media, a lot of more autistic women coming out and explaining their diagnosis. And I do see that a lot of people are getting dismissed, or people are like, no, they don't actually have autism.
They're hating. They're like, they don't believe that.
Hate on it. And I don't know if you have any like support or guidance for people who are facing that.
Every time that happens, because I live in the comment section. If someone comments on my thing, I'm going to look at it, and
you're going to think about it.
I'm going to think about it. And there are definitely times when people like say things. I go and I look at their Instagram and I'm like, this is a bot.
Yeah.
And even if they're not a bot, I pretend that they're a bot.
It's a bot.
Yeah.
And I know that's like, it's easy to say. And like, sometimes, they might not be, they might just be trying to put you down, but it's not, I don't want to say it's not my place to educate those people, but it's not my place to force them to learn. Like, I'd love to
just to live your own truth, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if they don't want to accept reality for what it is, that's, I guess, on them. They can live in their sad little world. Like, I guess I'm on the side of it that like, I don't want to hate on people. And sometimes I will give into the trolls because I know that they're real, but it's just, I hit them with the niceness. Like, okay. There was one.
You say so, sparkle emoji.
Right. There was one guy that had posted like a comment on one of my Instagram reels. It was like, I promise you no one cares. And my response to him was,
you do.
There's a lot of relief in knowing that nobody cares. Because that means I can do whatever the heck I want and no one will care. And it's just I can't always have that perspective. But when it comes to like social media and stuff online, everything's a lie anyway, especially now with AI. Like, I can't believe anything or everything I see. And neither can anyone else. Like I try and post my good moments, but I have to post bad moments or people won't, find me relatable and understand exactly like that there are these bad days. And, I follow this Instagram account, Influencers in the Wild, and people will make fun of the people, poke fun of like people that will cry on video. And I get that, like, it's a little cringy, someone putting up their phone and crying. But if that person doesn't put up their phone and cry and be vulnerable in that moment, and it is a little weird, people aren't going to like relate, I guess. Like, they're not going to.
Honestly,
it becomes like a false sense of reality, because then people who are following you, they wouldn't, like, when you do act real and give them like just what the day-to-day is actually like, they're like, oh my gosh, it's not, my life isn't so bad. I get it. I'm relating. I understand.
Exactly.
Thank you for shedding light on that too.
Right.
And the, the support that comes out of it is way more than the hate that comes out of it. And, you know, you can see negative comments, but when you see 4 negative comments and, you know, on Instagram, you can see if you're like a creator profile, you can see like the shares. If I can see that like 3,000 people share this to their friends because they related back to it, those 4 negative comments, thanks for boosting my engagement. Like,
Okay.
you know, that's just social media. But like in real life, the haters in real life, you have a choice. Like you can choose to keep that person.
Yeah.
And it's hard to just let go. Like I love my people.
Yeah.
But if I've come to the point where I don't have enough spoons. I don't have enough to give to all of these people if they're not willing to help pour back in. And if they, you know, I haven't had anyone directly in my life say like, no, Lauren, no, like, no. I think I've had more people be like,
or behind your back, maybe.
Like that makes sense. You know, I had an ex-boyfriend from 2007 have the audacity to say, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. I'm like,
get out.
But it's like, it's also like
nerve.
The nerve, the audacity, but also he wasn't wrong. And you would hope that someone that you spent a lot of time with that can reflect back on and be like, oh no, yeah. She did do that, because some people that you spend a lot of time with still nowadays, you know, they didn't see it, but they also, you know, it's really increasing the awareness that girls have autism, that women have autism, that we've had autism, and that we didn't just get autism. It's not a trend. It's not, I see
You're not
people
doing it for cool points.
No, like
like we're literally running out of your house.
Like I'm running out of my house. I'm crying on the floor. There are times where I just perseverate. I say the same thing over and over and over again while like on the floor in the fetal position, holding my fingers, going like this, rocking back and forth, and you can't get me out of it. I promise you. It ain't a trend. It's not something that I'm going to just toss in the trash when, you know, Instagram goes out. I'm going to use my tools. I think it's made me a better parent, a better clinician, knowing because I was learning. I wasn't always like a good, compassionate person. I don't want to say that good, compassionate person, but I was masking a lot when I was in like my teenage years and my early 20s, based on like, I watched a lot of reality TV and I just thought that's how people acted. My favorite TV show was The Bad Girls Club.
Stop.
I'm going to learn how to react. Like people were, you know, in college, like I had like some friends because some people just found me funny because I am. Yeah. But, you know, they could get it. Like, they can get it. But, like, groups of girls, when you put a group of girls together, you know when someone's different because they're all like, and they always, to me. And, you know, but now that, like, I've, like, learned more about, because I had to say that just because people will be like, Lauren's not compassionate or empathetic. She was mean to me. I've learned, people, so please hear me. I've learned because I had to. I couldn't have compassion and empathy when I wasn't being given compassion and empathy. Yeah. You know, I was in a loveless relationship in college that just, you're too sensitive. Why are you crying so much? And everything that was wrong with me was an autistic trait. Everything. So, and you like look back and you're like, oh man, how do you?
You know what's even silly? Like the fact that you have to get a diagnosis for it to be like, okay, that's fine now.
Validated.
Like, that's
like an actual, and for some people, like that's like my parents didn't they believed me.
Yeah.
They believed the doctor.
When it was the doctor.
Like, you know,
it's so interesting, especially like Yusra and I were doing a little bit of research before the episode, just learning a little bit about like more autistic women. And the statistics are all over the place when you do the research, but it does show that about 80% of autistic women go undiagnosed. Just because of the like nature of it, essentially, like the science.
And I saw a statistic. I say saw because I didn't read it. I read the words and it was a TikTok, and I don't know if this
same.
Like I don't know because the thing about social media is that there is a lot of truth, but there's also a lot of misinformation.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is true or not, but I did see something that autistic women who are undiagnosed are also more likely to commit suicide because of their diagnosis. Like I think it was 9 times more likely than women who aren't. And as someone that does suffer from suicide ideation, sometimes when these, meltdowns and happenings go about, I can understand it. I'm like, I totally get it. If I didn't have support, like that's the biggest thing in autism in general, in ABA in general, there needs to be support. And it's not just the RBT support. It's not just the BCBA support. It is full collaboration support for every person that is involved in the client's life. And, I know that I wouldn't. I know myself enough, and I know where I get so far enough that if I didn't have someone to stop me, like kinetic energy and object emotion is going to stay in motion unless it's force stops. And if I'm not stopped, it's going to go. Yeah. So I can only imagine people that don't have support and and didn't get, I have people in my DMs asking me for advice on how to get a diagnosis. And the thing is, I can only say you have to talk to your doctor because
you don't know. That's what you did. That's what I did and for me, it was so quick and easy and like breezy. But it's not as easy. That's what I was going to say. Usually when I was reading about it or when I look at like TikTok, it's not this easy.
It's not easy.
You're so lucky that you luckily found someone and she listened to you.
And I've also had doctors in one of the best medical states, quickest medical states, and that's Massachusetts. So if you're, I had a doctor that listened.
Yeah.
And it was a woman doctor, and that just for me, I always feel more comfortable from a woman to woman that can like understand like what I'm saying. And that's not always the case, but I felt listened to. And I think when people are actually able to understand that it's not just like, I'm not being a hypochondriac. I'm not, histrionic. I'm not all these things that people keep telling me that I am. I promise you. Yeah. I'm telling you that this is something that's not like, that's in me. And like, after seeing it for so many years and after being like, you sit down and every day it's another thing like, oh, that's why I can't make a phone call. And I still
can't.
It's a lot of behavior momentum. It is a lot of behavior momentum. It is a lot of just really trying to get us there and like, get up and going. But it's things like that you look back and you're like, okay, that's weird. Yeah. How did I see it then? But knowledge is power. I didn't know. No one talks about it. No one, I wasn't a little boy that had no vocal issues. Yeah. And,
and that's what I want to touch on too. Why is it that like so many women are being diagnosed later in life, or why the people are missing it? It's mostly like, I know we talked about like the masking and the camouflaging, but when we were looking at like some of the societal and cultural norms, like adding to it too, do you feel like you faced any of those? So like the way you coped with things maybe were different or like,
I coped with things. I mean, I wouldn't say we're always different because I would talk to my friends about it and that would make sense. But my friends are also very neurodivergent. So, talking to other people, it might not have, but there would be times I'm trying, like I'm thinking directly of like a high school time when I was a cheerleader. I just got hurt, and you know, reacting after like told you can't do anything anymore, and you know, you can't even stand and stuff. You think your friends are like good for you, but like I had a full on absolute screaming match with I don't do those things. Like I get, people will say, again, people will be like, Lauren, don't you lie. Like you loved being mean to people, but it's not it. It's, I don't like conflict. I don't like being mean. I'm not that way. It's like my tone would always come off a certain way, but this time it was, this is not how people react. This is not how people should deal. And I got ostracized.
Yeah.
For it.
I know you were talking about the mean girl. Like people thought you were the mean girl, but you didn't want to be. And that wasn't what you were trying to do. You weren't like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go yell at this person.
It's tone and it's reacting. And it's like the people that were like my friends, you know, they unfortunately, looking back, and I said this to one of my friends the other day when I saw her, I was like, we were mean girls, but I and her were survivalist.
Yeah.
We were more accepted by them because of how we approached things. Were a little bit more abrasive in a sense. People like my tone can come off so condescending and rude sometimes when I'm not. I'm really just trying to be inquisitive. So like, and then I'll find myself like talking like that, kind of like Paris Hilton she always says like she like talks in like a baby voice, like when she's like nervous and stuff. And like, that's what I've been starting to do now. Like I've had to start doing, like, I'll talk like this and I put on my customer service voice and like, I try and like feel comfortable, because if I'm just like talking like myself, like I'm trying to talk now, it came off. So like they were accepting me of me more, because the other girls, not that they were mean, it's just like, they didn't know. I was a little too much. They didn't know how to deal with it. And it's wasn't their job, because they weren't as accepting, I think, you know, I would say they weren't accepting me for who I was, and I couldn't understand why, because college, like that's the time I probably was when I wasn't, you know, with my scary ex-boyfriend and I was like with the girls at school, I tried to unmask the most then, to see, can I be accepted for who
or what would the reaction be?
Exactly. And the reaction just wasn't great for some people. And for some, I still am best friends. I saw her last night with one of my college best friends. Like, you know, and another one, she was my roommate. I'm still really good friends with, and she was on the dance team. She was on the dance team leadership. She knew that I was going to sing it, because she knew that I was upset about it, but she also knew that she couldn't do anything about it. She's like, I tried. So when you try to self-advocate, you try to get the help, and it still is not going to work, and you can send in an anonymous survey. That's always my downfall, is someone sends an anonymous survey and I do it. And like, because I've been fired for a job for that same thing, because they find out it's me. And so it's definitely, I never understood it then, but you look back now, I felt so ostracized. My parents will tell this story that I basically switched schools on my own, like in high school. Like I checked myself out of one school, did the application for another, got myself in, did all that, because I just couldn't stand being with those people anymore. Like I felt escape behavior. Like I am such a runner. I am an escaper and I've learned from that now knowing, but it's just like I do with all my other clients. Like I still want to escape. I still need to escape from this thing, but I can't just get in the car and run away. I have to escape a different way that's a little bit more appropriate. And of course,
functional skills.
Exactly. Like, of course I could have known this beforehand. I could have known this last November. I could have known this all these years before, but I think what it took was me understanding, like, finally getting the answer as to what's wrong with me. Why am I like this? Like, what the questions when I would have my meltdowns for years before, since the question's been answered, it's kind of like, okay, I'm able to kind of move forward. And it's not easy because sometimes I'll get in myself, well, just because that's the answer doesn't mean I like the answer. It doesn't mean it makes it any better.
I was going to say it sheds relief. Like you mentioned earlier that like it has relief, but it's not. It probably brings relief knowing there's rationale and a reason, but it doesn't make working through all of the challenges you're still going through any easier.
Right. Like in the moment, it's never a relief, but afterwards and like in hindsight and like even like beforehand, it's a relief every time other it. But like what I meant by like felt like my world is ending, like it's the end of the world. It's for me, it still kind of is. It's like, it's not this big deal. People should not, there are obviously severe cases and way more high needs cases of autism. And I'm not that. Basically, it's the end of like my world because I still have to like learn to accept it and like,
and learn to deal with
it. That like, okay, this is it. And learn to deal with it and learn that just because I have it, right? Like, it doesn't make it like, okay. Like, people aren't just going to accept, if they're like sick and they have strep, like they're going to go and they're going to get the help that they need and stuff. But in these moments, you're so sick, you don't even want to get up. You're like, oh, I can't do it. Like, I need it.
That's a really good analogy.
It's so hard. It's like, and that's like, it's just, you want to get up, you want to do, but in those moments you can't. So until someone can get that whole, I mean, that's just my brain. Like, I think the world is ending in general. So now it's added on this thing that society's going to look at me weird, that society's going to not like me, but not for nothing. I've been trying to, build my Instagram and my following, like let people know who I am so I can like share like my silliness for years. And it wasn't until I let everyone know, hey, I have autism, that people got it. And like, that's why people be like, oh, it's a trend, but it's like, no. People relate.
It's related.
And so,
touch on, you mentioned like the support. So you have a lot of family support. Your husband sounds wonderful. And it's just like supporting you. What else are you kind of doing now that you've gotten this diagnosis to support yourself and learn some skills to like cope and manage through some things you went through?
You'd think I would try and do a little bit more, so I don't want to lie to people and say I'm doing so much. I've gotten, a new set of doctors, but outside supports right now, it's more, and this is just a real issue, it's more of a monetary issue. Finding the right person that takes insurance or isn't, like, I'm a behavior coach. I don't take insurance. And it's because I believe insurance is the devil. But, I also like insurance because I don't want to pay out of pocket. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I can't afford the care that I know, like the people that I would want to go to, I simply can't afford right now. And that's reality. And I think that's something that a lot of people just have troubles with in general. Like, it's not cheap to get the evaluation, to get the diagnosis. Like, it's not.
And did you have to pay out of pocket? Like, I don't know if you mind me asking. Like, did you have to pay out of pocket for that, or like, did your
really?
That's, and it's not cheap, isn't it? Like, I don't know. I've heard parents tell me like it's over like $1,000.
Yes, and like luckily I'm on like a payment plan, which is great. Yeah, like awesome. But
thank God for that.
Like, thank God for that. But it shouldn't cost so much, and care shouldn't cost so much. And that's actually, one of the things that made me very weary about ABA when I not weary, but like when I left was like,
when you went back,
there's no money in healthy people. I can't keep doing this. And that's not the case. It is kind of, but it's like, I want to get the help. I want to do the help. And I want to not only get my help, but like support someone that's doing their
job. Well, I feel like your Instagram is doing a really good job of that. Like, just so you know, like you're reaching people, like you have I forget how many now, but like you're reaching so many people.
I know. And like, that's good. Like, it makes me feel it like, that's awesome. Like, I want to reach those people so they can feel like seen. Like, maybe some of the things I say and do don't always relate.
It can make it make sense for them, maybe. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And, you know,
it should be more accessible though, like just resources for
it needs to be talked about more. You know, I think I've seen more and more celebrities come out and say like they have been diagnosed with autism. Holly Madison, who was from The Girls Next Door, she was a Hugh Hefner's girlfriend, pop culture girly. She came out. Paris Hilton, you know, all of these women, like, because they're getting these diagnoses. I think the more we talk about it, just like with anything, the more awareness that we're spreading, like, it's not going to make the number go down, of course.
Or we can reduce the stigma a little bit, maybe.
Exactly.
You know?
And like maybe making it more, people will see that. Like, all it takes is one other, you know, person that's willing to use their degree, use what they know, and use it for good. Like, there are doctors out there, you know, neurologists, not pediatricians, well, maybe psychiatrists, all those that are willing and happy and empathetic to autistic minds and situations, like my doctor, that are willing, like, not to be cheap, but
no one goes into these fields not wanting to help people, you know. That's also, like, they're in helping professions. Right. Maybe we just need to do a better job of raising awareness so people are like,
making sure that, like, it's not just awareness for the one. It's, you know, it's for all. It's for everyone. Like, not people, you know, lower class families can't just always go and get an autism diagnosis. Now, luckily in Massachusetts,
think about how many appointments it takes.
So many. And people that I've talked to just are like, I'm on a wait list, and you know, hopefully we'll hear back soon. And I just say, you don't have to wait for me. Like, for me to, like, work with people, like, I take self-diagnoses because I don't take insurance, so it doesn't really matter. And I accept that, because sometimes that monetary aspect is just what is keeping people from knowing. And formal diagnosis, I would always say, is the way to go, especially if you are going to say, you know, you're going to use it for anything. I'm like, you know, if you're going to say, like, use it for work, like you're saying, like, telling, like, work, like, I'm autistic, and you have to document that. It has to be documented. You have to be able to say, and you're not going to, you know, that's not your business to tell work, like, that's your business. But, like, if you are going to say these things, if you are going to look for support, insurance is not going to get you support without a formal diagnosis for autism. If you're, like, looking for certain kind of supports, if you're looking, you know, for, but so for some people, I don't necessarily think that they not everyone needs one. Yeah. If you believe it in yourself, but if you want to need any any supports, I guess that would be the only reason. Yeah, like, you have to do that, and again, that can be a lot. Like, it's a lot of time, a lot of money, and sometimes you may not get the results that you thought you were going to get going in because you went to someone that doesn't agree. And as a woman, going to a doctor is scary enough. So to go to a doctor and say, I think I have autism, and growing up, it was like, she's just a chatty Cathy. She's just, you know, a little quirky, you know, those kinds of things. It's hard because they don't see the internal. They don't see the private events that are occurring. And I could not vocalize for a very long time because I never learned how. No, it's not innate to me. It's not something that I just know to talk. I mean, I don't think that's just an autistic trait. I just think a lot of people don't know how to talk about their feelings in general nowadays. Yeah. But for me, it's a lot. As someone that is emotional, that does, you know, I'm very emotional. So you'd think I'd know my emotions, but I need to get my emotion wheel out to pinpoint where I'm at sometimes. Yeah. I don't know.
No.
And, you know,
That must be hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Diving into a different topic, like, how do you feel like it changed, like, after you got the diagnosis, now that, you know, you have autism, how did it change your practice as a BCBA? Because you practiced as a BCBA for a little bit, right? Before you became a behavior coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was a BCBA, like, doing, like, insurance, clinical supervisor, all that for, like, 4 years. I was, like, you know, doing all that for 4 years. And, like, now I still do part-time stuff, like, with insurance base. Again, it's the devil, but girls got to do what a girl's got to do in this economy.
Yeah.
And what was important was that I did find a place that when I was doing, like, finding where I wanted to work, or if I could work anywhere that was going to accept me, I straight up told every interviewer at the first interview, I was like, oh, by the way, I'm autistic. Is that going to be a problem?
Yeah.
And I either didn't hear back from them, or they said
you would hope
it wouldn't
that someone,
but they had. You'd hope.
Yeah.
You'd hope, but it wasn't. And the times that I didn't say anything, I'd get the callbacks, all this. So
it's a little frustrating.
It was so frustrating. But then I finally found a company. I told the owner is the one that called me, and we had a great conversation. I told her, she was like, we've got other people that are autistic working for us too. No big deal. Like, whatever you need. And I was like, okay, cool, awesome. And I've been with that company since May. And when I started, you know, working back up, it was like night and day, kind of like out with the DTT, out with non-compliance, out with everything. Because I took the time in between, you know,
to learn,
not being in any way. Yeah. Like, it's time to learn from my mistakes, from my community, and to do better, because I have to think, if someone were telling me to do the same things that I'm supposed to be asking my clients to do, could I even do them now? Could I sit still for a circle time for 10 minutes and be expected to sit still? People are going to be like, this girl will not stop moving, never have her on again. She doesn't stop, because I don't. So I can't expect my client to. And I'm very much I'm more of a hardo, I guess, with parents nowadays, because I am a parent, and I have to kind of like say to them, like, let's be real here, guys.
Maybe this isn't something we need to work on.
Right? Like, let's be real.
And that's the hardest part, I think, about being a BCBA, is like when parents are like, I want to work on this. And you know, like, no.
Go work on it.
Yeah.
Go work.
Like, it's not going to be me.
Right? Like, little Jimmy, he doesn't necessarily need to sit for 10 minutes. Little boys should not be sitting for 10 minutes in general, you know, at a circle. So, you know, I try, and the empathy was there before, but the analyst hat, I think, was so heavy. And now that I had taken the hat off for so much, and I just formed this autistic unicorn horn here, that's taking over. I don't work on these, you know, I won't do TTT. I do everything natural. If my RBTs ask me, like, oh, like, should we like do like Technicolors colors? Like, I have like all like these like flashcards and stuff. I was like,
nah.
You can, if you want to know what colors are, like, let's go around the classroom. Let's go outside. Like, we're not doing these things because they're, now that like it's like I just got it.
Switch,
like, it really was. And like, you'd hope that it doesn't take getting an autism diagnosis to do that. But for me, I always believed that I was a good clinician before. I've had fun programs. I would be playing, like, but there were those other aspects that don't necessarily need to happen, because they, like, normal kids, not normal, allistic kids aren't sitting down. Maybe some kids are, but, you know, red, blue, green. They're not doing these at home after school. They're going and they're playing with their friends. Yeah. So that deeply changed like how I would view sessions and stuff. So if parents were like, well, my child needs to do this, like they need to be, I would ask, well, why? Why do you like, even like simple things like right away, like they need to be able to like tell me like their colors and keep going back to colors. But I'm like, well, they don't talk and they don't tell you that they want to eat something that they like. So let's go and work on that first. And that's always something that I did, but now it's more so, okay, I hear you, but you like, I think I'm more open with them now. And I do tell parents. I have found that telling parents that I am autistic has been helpful. And if I tell a parent and they don't respond well, I take myself off the case. Yeah. You know, like in like those situations, obviously anyone that works with me, you know, one-to-one as a behavior coach, they know. I make it very clear they're making that decision. They don't have to stay, but like parents, it's, you know, it's a hit or miss.
Yeah. But I think the fact that you can explain like how it feels internally or how things are internally, like, and bring them to the reality. Like, this is what your kid is going through right now. Right. And I'm telling you, because I'm lucky enough to have the words to tell you. Right. Or maybe like little Jimmy doesn't. It can be very eye-opening.
And some parents like get it. And some parents, you know, they have a learned history that it's really hard to just, you know, get through, and like they don't understand the realities of the situation because they just don't, they can't relate. And I can't make them relate. I can paint a very pretty picture and write a report that they can see like why and everything. But unless I'm like writing them a novel that might go along with what little Jimmy's feeling, because, you know, I can say like, this is what I think he is feeling because this is what I've felt myself. But little Jimmy and me, two completely different people. And that's what parents you know, I'm a parent and I'd be like, listen, okay, you can talk.
Yeah.
It's true. And so I think about those things too, because, you know, vice versa. It's like I can see those things, but it's like, okay, parents want me to do those things, but little Jimmy can't talk. So I have to tell him like, the frustration of you not understanding him is so much less than the frustration of him not being able to use words. And sometimes I know I can't use words and I can feel it here. So he may feel it here. And if you feel like a knife here, parent, it's not going to feel great. And like, that's just, you know, I do believe when you, even in general, if you're eye-opening to yourself, and this is just as a person, not a clinician, if you know what's going on, you're going to be better at whatever you do. Right. But not everyone has that luxury of figuring out what's going on. And, but I do, it's simply changed because I can remain empathetic. I know I won't lose myself, where I found, you know, some BCBAs can lose themselves into this field, into the hour requirement, into, you know, the beautiful paychecks and the quick clients in and out, write a report, write a note, get in and out. And I was finding myself like I might fall down that hole and I didn't want to. Yeah. And now that I know about my diagnosis, I know I won't. Yeah. I know like it's not even like I won't, it's that I can't. Yeah. It's that I can't let myself fall down into these things, you know, like these systems that don't help and reinforcing those systems that I find don't help. It might not be what everyone feels like, but you know, these big places that aren't doing all of these good things. And I know that I won't do that. I had a feeling before, but it's like kind of like getting like my prediction read, like my justness will never just stop because like that is in me.
Kind of speaking along, like kind of you spoke a little bit about the challenges with like parents. Are there any other specific challenges you've faced as returning to the field as an autistic clinician?
Like I said, I've been very lucky because where I wound up, I'm accepted.
Yeah.
But there definitely still are issues that I wouldn't even call them issues anymore. I've found the challenges that I've run into and that I've actually been able to just deal with.
Right.
Challenging parents is like we talked about, but now I could always just deal with a challenging parent before on my own, but the internal private event that would go on, the phone call, the moments waiting up for the Zoom, the confrontation if I had to talk to them about something. It was a lot. It was a lot that like could knock me out I would have to set up a whole 3 hours before to prep and time afterwards to get over it.
Yeah.
And now that I've known, I've actually just asked for more help.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy because like that's what people should do. But like I asked for the support, so it's
you just keep it inside.
Right, because I didn't want, not to burden. I just wanted to do my job.
Handle yourself, get it done.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now but now if I need something, I will be like, hey, I have this problem. I won't start it off like that, but they all know I have my supervisor and the owner. That's it. But then there's me. So I go directly to them. And if I need help, like with a challenging parent, they will accompany me to the parent meeting, back me up. If I need help with like scheduling or anything, like my clients, my clients aren't close. I work in Massachusetts. I live in New Hampshire. Wow. They're next to each other, but I drive about 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh, wow.
Unpaid time. And I don't mind that. But when like certain things come up,
right,
they're very flexible. This company does not have a billable requirement. So that was always a big thing. I know. And I'm part-time, so it doesn't matter, but they're the
lots of places part-time. They're like, still like, no, you have to do this and then this and this. And I feel like it's worse. Right.
And I'm like, no. Yes. And so I've found like this, if it were anywhere else, I know I wouldn't know what the challenges were much because I would have just left.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've been this will be my 5th ABA company from when I started, like not just as a BCBA.
Yeah.
Right. Like where I started, I had this beautiful dream that I was going to be there forever, that I'd pass, that they would take me on right away. Like the dream, right? And that obviously didn't occur.
Yeah.
So every place that you leave, you learn a little bit about what you want in a company, what you can handle. I knew that I could not be a person. And I was lucky that the second company I went to was awful. They were really bad. They weren't paying me as a BCBA. So the third company I went to decided to pay me as a clinical supervisor, even though I just passed like 6 months ago. But sure, give me the title, give me the money. It was one of those things that I was young and naive, and that's fine. But the great part was that it was hybrid. I was only going to have 3 to 5 clients. And 3 to 5 clients sounds pretty easy.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was amazing. I actually ended up having 2 to 3 because I was doing so many other things.
Yeah.
So, as you're growing and like learning, that's what works for me. Anytime they would try and give me more clients, I would take them. And then I would be burnt out. I kept realizing the more people and other people's problems, quote unquote, that I was dealing with, the less I was able to deal with my own. Like I could do the work of admin stuff for like half the day and then people stuff for the other half of the day. But making it more was
too much for you.
Too much. So, you know, now that I'm at a place just like in my life, I know that I'm just gonna be like, well, I'm only going to work this many hours. And if you don't like that, then you don't need to keep me. You know, I don't need to stay. It's
not with your boundaries.
Exactly. You know, Abby Lee Miller once said, everybody's replaceable. That means me. That means them.
That means you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone. And so like I said, I'm lucky in the sense where my job is good and accommodating, but you know, not many places are good, like I said. But I went through probably 50 interviews.
Wow.
And
so how as like an ABA community can we as clinicians better support, you know, other clinicians that are on the spectrum and like our clients? What, like, do you have any advice for that?
Yeah.
It's really just like actually listening to the client, listening to those times when they say no, listening, like taking away the things that stop teaching certain things, stop, you know,
teaching compliance, stop.
Exactly. Like no one needs to learn how to comply. They're either going to do it like or not. Really, really try to get to know your client and like build that intrinsic motivation. Try harder and try to ask for help. I think one of the things that I've found and that I'm guilty of as a clinician, not anymore because I said I started, was asking for help, was doing clinicals and like using that time to talk with your other clinicians during like that you have this thing where your client is not making progress and they want to make progress. That's important. Working on programs that your client needs to for their development to be an independent human and that they want to work on, making sure that you're conversing with others HIPAA compliantly and learning from others to do better. It's kind of taking yourself more out of like, I don't want to say the ABA space because we have to stay in this ABA space, but to listen to the voices of the people that don't jive with ABA. There are people that have called this field torturous. And, you know, when I inquire within, I can see why, because they weren't treated the way that we, you know, our clinicians nowadays are trying to promote and to try and show. Yeah. It's really just continuing to teach more about compassionate care, making, you know, caregiver collaboration, really using like different principles from different modalities and different therapies and working alongside those other clinicians.
Is so key. We talk about
that. I feel like on the podcast every
it's literally key.
That's all you need, guys. Collaboration.
Truly.
Seriously, it's key.
Like that's my advice. Work collaboratively. And that means, I think people like skimp out on this, like that means with the client too. Like bring the client around. Talk about the client as if the client is there and listening and being a part of it.
Yeah, talk about them in front of them.
Right. And if you do, involve them. Talk like, be like, hey, little Jimmy, do you want to work on your colors? If he says, no, I want to learn about dinosaurs. All right. Well, we're going to learn about colors and dinosaurs at the same time, I guess, then. Yeah. You know, it's listening and not taking the science part, I guess, and only going forth with the science part.
Yeah.
Punishment works. It scientifically does. Extinction works. It scientifically does. Is it the most compassionate and empathetic and right thing to do every time? No. So it's really being a scientist. Take your hat off for a little bit. I guess that's my biggest thing is, you know, working with this community and like learning more. If you want to do more for your clients is just taking that science hat off for a bit put the computer down, don't care about the data, care about the client and who they are as a human, because at the end of the day,
person.
That's what they are. They are a human. They are a person. They have every right to behave how they want to, I always tell parents, and I write these things this way, there's no really bad behaviors. It's non-contextual behaviors.
Yeah.
Every behavior is an okay behavior in the right context. Everything has a context, and it's just trying to find the right context for that behavior.
Right.
And I think it's making sure that we as clinicians are using language and not putting these more of a stigma on the population, like maladaptive behaviors and all these words that put a damper on something that, of course I have meltdowns and stuff, but that part of my autism sucks, but I'm also hella creative. I'm really empathetic. I'm really, I'm sometimes loud and crazy and move around a lot. And that brings joy to others. And there's so much more that good, I'd say, that there's a lot of, people don't go and get therapy because everything's good. No one gets ABA therapy because things are going well and great. Mm-hmm. They get it because things aren't going how, they should progress. But that doesn't mean that things can't be well and great as they're not progressing as they should.
Right.
It doesn't have to be so bad.
My goal isn't to get the learner to fit the mold. It's just to support them and find the resources that they individually need.
Exactly. And making sure that when we leave, that things are good for them too. That there's consistency, that we're putting in and making sure that our programs relate or make sure that those things happen. I see a lot of clinicians, and like I said, I've been a clinical supervisor, so I had people underneath me. Again, no business, but I did. And I had to hear about, their issues and their stories, and we workshopped them.
No worries.
But it's just making sure that when you're doing things, it's making sense for the client.
I want to talk about how to support women that are diagnosed with autism later in life. I know we touched on it. Do you have any last closing thoughts before we end out for the day?
Yes, I actually have there's a book that I started reading, and I started reading it because the author's name can be a little confusing because her name is Laura James and I'm Lauren James. So I thought that was cool. It's an autobiography. It's called Odd Girl Out, My Extraordinary Autistic Life. I started it and I was okay, this is good. So definitely reading stories, but I found a lot. Go on Facebook. There's so many communities on Facebook, autistic women, Facebook groups specifically that have, you can write out your situation and people are going
to reply
to give you that reinforcement that you've been finally looking for.
Validation.
Exactly. Just social media in general, it's not the end all be all, but because there's some, there's definitely resources. I don't want to say that there's not resources, but where I found so much of my community and where I found the most acceptance and learned the most has been on social media, mostly because I'm a girly that sees something and then I want to learn the something.
Yeah.
So I'll see it, relate to it, and then learn about it more. But if there's other things, I have an arsenal. And what's really great is that people come to me and share a lot of different resources. So I can compile a list and we can leave it at the bottom of this.
A little description. Oh, that'd be beautiful.
It would be really, really cool because I want people to make sure, and especially women, if you can hear, my story or someone else's story and relate to it, and you can sometimes in your heart of hearts, and it's hard to behaviorally, define. It's not just it's a thought, it's an analogy, but when it's kind of if you know, and when you read about other people's stories like I had before and start to relate, you start to feel something oh, like almost a relief kind of thing, but like okay, so what's the next step kind of thing.
Even more
and
like
then
a realization.
Exactly. And I would talk to your doctor, but talk to the right doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste your time. If you are in a place, in a state, or an area that doesn't have like the best quality of doctors, or you talk to people where they were dismissed, do your research. I think that's something that's important for this area. And there, I know I'll have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's Perspire Health, and it's only in a few states, but it's definitely a resource point that I saw people talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a place to start. And, finding.
For us though, like I wonder like how can me and like Kirsten, like say we meet someone that was later diagnosed in life, or we have an RBT, or we have another BCBA on staff that has like fellow clinician that's on staff, and they tell us like they disclose they have autism. What's the best way I can support them? What do you
Don't
wish?
Treat them.
Yeah,
I think don't treat us differently than you were before. Other than when you notice, like it should change. What I've always thought is that my telling changes the viewpoint, kind of.
Right. Like where people are slightly maybe too nice, or
yes,
exactly.
So don't treat them any differently. But then when things do come up, have that understanding, because how I view it for myself is that I already felt very much not a part of, very much different, and
always left out of the group.
Exactly. So I don't want to be treated differently. I don't want all eyes on me. I don't want to be, singled out or given any preferential treatment. That's not what I'm asking for. But when things do come up where, a schedule changes, if there's a miscommunication, if there's, something, today I had to talk to my boss, and I literally had to say to her, I was like, right now, and it was a situation that, I don't want to say she caused, but like that had happened through work. And I was like, when I was having my meeting with her, I was like, right now I am very escalated. And I hope you can understand that my tone is not how I want to. And she responded with, don't worry about it. Like, I hear you. It's not taking, I think from my perspective and from my own experience, that people will take the severity or like the seriousness, I guess, like they won't understand it because they're still so used to me. Yeah. So it's not like it's remembering like, oh yes, this person is autistic, but that's not all I am. Yeah. But when I need that support, then when these autistic traits are coming out and they're ones that I need support with, to utilize, your skills as clinicians that you would with any other student, just as a human. And like, this is someone that I work with, and I want to make sure that they are good. Okay. I have an RBT that is, I think she just has ADHD, but it doesn't really matter. I put her, like, when she comes to me, I say, you're first. I have to, for your sake. It's, if you're having like a rough time and you can't do a session, I can't expect you to do anything correctly, to run it effectively, to be there fully for the client. So don't worry about it. I'll do the session that day. It's, making sure that you're a team player, and when your people need support, if you're going to offer that support, if you're going to say, I'm going to be a supportive person for you, because no one owes that to me. No one owes that to anyone. But if you're going to say, I will be a supportive person to you, asking them how that is and seeing, listening to them, and being okay with like the small, the small things. Maybe it's, they can't take a client for this set of time. And for someone else, it might just be like, well, we really need them and we know that they'll be okay. But for this specific person, it's like,
they won't be.
Like, let it go. Like I get rules and rule governed behavior. I get.
I feel like it's not like not everyone has to be the same. Just because Kirsten has 8 kids on her caseload doesn't mean like Lauren needs 8 kids on her caseload. Nor does she. That.
Exactly. And, you know, I can do a bunch of other things. You know, when I was a clinical supervisor, I also was creating and running a data management application and like writing over 3,000 teaching instructions and goals. So I wasn't working one-on-one with clients, wasn't bringing in insurance money, but I was working, you know, and making sure that you go with their strengths, just like you would with a client. Like, what are your RBTs, your, you know, anyone that you work with strengths? If they're really, really great with people skills, make sure you're going off of that. If they're really, really not, then finding something else, you know, finding something else.
Well, those are really all really great tips. I really enjoyed talking to you today, Lauren.
You've been so
eye-opening. I know, very helpful. And very, like, I feel like in the beginning I was going to cry, like when you're talking about your story, like how you came to be. But I really enjoyed it. I loved having you on.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us and willing to share your story with us and with our audience.
Thanks. I didn't cry, and I'm going to be so proud of myself for that, guys, you know. Yes, but thank you. This was so fun. I'm like such a fan, so I'm like geeking out over here. So it's so great. And I'm happy to share my story. And, you know, even if one person like hears it and like feels like slightly a little bit like, okay, all right, maybe it's not so bad, and it takes them off of a mental ledge for 35 seconds.
Yeah.
I did my job of the day, and I can feel good about it. So thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here and inviting me. I'm so excited.
No problem. And with that, we'll see you guys all next time. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.